So everyone is talking about DeepSeek. I was in the barber's the other day and it was a topic of conversation. Rarely is it that the very niche things that I'm interested in become mainstream media news. So I'm going to do a video on DeepSeek coupled with our favorite coding IDE, Cursor. Should you use the two of them together? How do you use the two of them together? And I'm going to cover some of the recent updates to Cursor as well and how you can use them to speed up your AI code generation. All that coming up. Okay, so first my quick take on DeepSeek. It's a really great model that originated out of China. What's amazing is that it's open source. When you're using deepseek.com or the chat version of it or their API, you are sending your content, your code, your deep secrets all the way over to some kind of processing center in China. And the same goes for when you're sending your content to OpenAI or any of the other models that you might work with. They have various degrees of privacy set up, but you just never know. But what's really cool about DeepSeek is they have a local model and a variation of local models that you can install if you've got good enough hardware on your PC or your Mac to actually run the model without connecting in any way to the internet. And I did that a couple of days ago, and it actually works really well, albeit it's slow enough on my 3060, but it is really quite compelling. And I think what we're going to see is people take the model, the open weights, put it onto their own hardware and servers and offer APIs at a really discounted cost for everyone. So what does this mean for us building software with AI? It means prices are going to come down significantly. I think there's still challenges that DeepSeek are not addressing in terms of the infrastructure and the scale that's needed. A lot of these kind of problems OpenAI has solved already along with Anthropic. So there's still some hurdles to get over, but it definitely has shaken up the industry. So all I would say is just be mindful of how you use the model, what you're using the model for, but have some fun with it as well. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is how it actually connects to Cursor. First of all, you want to make sure you're running the most recent version. So we can go up here to help and then about, and you should see version 4.5.4 or anything above 4.5. If you don't have that, you can hit Control-Shift-P. And then you can type in Cursor update, you'll see it highlighted here, or Cursor attempt update, run that, and it should attempt to update for you. If that doesn't work, you can go to cursor.com, download the most recent version and see if that works. Now it does say that this is a rolling update, so it might not be available in your area, but that's how you need to go and update it. So a couple of different changes. If we go over to our Cursor settings up here in the top right, and then we scroll down, we can see we now have project rules in there. I'll ignore that for a minute. We'll come back to it, but we have models. So in the models, you can enable any model that you want. And now you've got DeepSeek R1 and DeepSeek V3. So DeepSeek version 3 is probably closest to Claude Sonnet, which I would use mostly for software development. And also like GPT-4, it's a more, I guess it's a mixture of experts model. And then you have DeepSeek R1, which is more equivalent to the 0-1 range. It's got a chain of thought. It'll actually show you as it thinks through things. And I think it's priced at a higher level. I'm on the $20 a month plan. It's going to give you 500 fast premium requests. So basically a premium request is any model that's like Claude or 4.0, and I think now it also includes the DeepSeek models. So it's unclear if Cursor are going to pass on some saving, considering DeepSeek is a lot cheaper, but you do have to take into account that Cursor does a whole lot more than just make an API call on your behalf. It's doing a lot of work in the background to do some contextualizing of your code base, and also using a variation of different models to achieve different things. If you were to actually connect Claude or OpenAI directly via API, you'd end up running up a higher bill because Cursor just does a great job of aggregating a lot of the calls and just making it more affordable. So I'm still happy to pay $20 a month for the kind of productivity I'm getting. So in order to actually get DeepSeek working, we would go over here. We can open the AI pane, and then let's say we pick a new composer by clicking the plus button here. Now we have the ability to select the model here, whether it's DeepSeek version 3 or 1. And then we have the ability to select normal or agent. Well, we actually don't. So DeepSeek models are not set up to work with the agent yet. So what's the difference between a composer normal mode and agent? Well, agent is the mode that I use most often because it essentially does all the work for you. It basically can run through running terminal commands. It can create all the files for you. It looks at the linting errors. It goes and it fixes all of those. It does a lot more autonomous movement. It really is an agent. It makes decisions and moves forward. And it's the one I enjoy the most. So we're not getting that functionality with DeepSeek yet. So for me, that's the reason why I won't be using it that much until it is actually fully engaged. Now, I did work on a project where I used both DeepSeek v3 and DeepSeek R1 to create out a project. And I have to say it was very comparable to using Claude 3.5. Using v3 is slightly slower, I found, than Claude 3.5, but that just could depend on the service that they're using. I think they're using Fireworks.ai in terms of hosting the DeepSeek model and having it work with Cursor. Using R1 is really interesting because you can actually see the chain of thought as it works through things. So let me say, I want to say something like, let's add clerk authentication to this project. Don't generate any code, just talk to me about how you would do that in terms of typing. So I'm in normal mode, I'm in DeepSeek version 3, I want to try out R1, and then I can click submit. So what you're going to see here is this think. So basically it's showing the chain of thought for the model as it thinks through, okay, the user wants to add the authentication, wants to do all this kind of stuff, add the environment variables, and then it gets to a point where it's going to actually make its suggestions. You can see it's finished thinking. We've got our recommendations that it has made. Okay, so you might have seen here that there is this little icon, and that's because in my Cursor rules, if I go over here, I have this little context check, which I use in the various different Cursor rules files that I'm using to make sure that it's still in context and it's being applied. So when you're working with models and you're sending lots of content, your context window is only so big, how much code it can remember. And when you have longer conversations, you can often, your rules can fall out of context. Now I think Cursor are working on this, but I like to use different little emojis in the different files to make sure that I know that they're being kept into account. I've also added in little gotchas here like shadcn. They always, if you're using DeepSeek or Claude, it will use the wrong command to install shadcn components, but in GPT-4 it seems to work fine. And then I like tidier commit messages. So what it does here is it gives me this little best practice for my commit messages, and when it finishes its thinking, it gives me the git command for whatever I was working on. Because one thing that's very important when you're working with AI is you're constantly committing. Okay, so let's just take a pop over to the changelog and see what else is new. Okay, so the first change we have is a change to how Cursor rules are set up. So essentially it's setting up this directory structure. So let's just pop over here, back into Cursor again. So in the past, what you did with Cursor rules is used a Cursor rules file. So you would add in any common rules to that project that you wanted to make sure that the model was applying, like what stack you're using or any particular gotchas. But now you can go over here to your settings again, And then if I scroll down here, we have specific project rules, and I can add new rules here. And here's one that I've added already. I've added this rule that says use Prisma for all database operations, and here's the actual rule that I want to apply, because sometimes I find it gets confused between using the Supabase client and using the Prisma client. So I just want to make sure that we have one source of truth, and how it actually automatically creates this folder structure. So we've .cursor/rules, and then we have this MDC file, very much like how Obsidian works with your information. And you can actually do some globbing here as well, but I haven't actually tested that out yet. So that's a departure for how cursor rules normally work. I imagine this is useful because in a cursor rules file, there's probably various different rules that I want to apply, and maybe I want to componentize them and move them across projects, or maybe I want to have them reference certain files when they're run and have different contexts at different times. You know, before I talked about using a design mode. So, you know, when I work in design mode, I want to scaffold or put the skeleton of the app together. And in this case, maybe I could just move this design mode as a rule, and then I could just add the context of that rule when I wanted to work in that way. So that's basically at a high level the cursor rules. So what else have we got? So summarizing previous composers. So it's important that when you're using your composer, you'll run or you'll create a feature, it's important to kind of refresh that or create a new composer and not just have this one long conversation, because of course context can fall out and you can have problems there. And what you didn't have before was the ability to have the new composer understand what happened before. So what's happening now is it's basically summarizing all the previous composer windows using a model, and then adding that to the context when you create the new composer. So it brings forward that knowledge. Everything is about managing your context and your memory. Okay, so the agent sees recent changes. The agent can use a tool to see your recent changes. It also sees changes made between user messages. I'm not 100% sure on this one, but I'm assuming that as the agent runs through its commands and its work, you might be making independent changes in the background, and it is now able to pick up on that. What I'd love for it to be able to do is, not unlike how Klein works, is that it can actually take a snapshot of what's being produced in your local host on the browser, see any console errors, and actually work to fix those. So this is the feature I'd love to see, which I like in Klein. Better code base understanding. So they've got a new model for code base understanding. So within VS Code or within Cursor, they have a way of indexing and understanding your code base. And this is really important for how the model works and what context it sends and the management of the context. So I've assumed they've made some improvements there. Didn't notice huge difference in the projects I've been working on, but good to see. The Fusion model, so they've improved the tabbing. And to be honest, I'm not using tab a whole lot. I actually don't write any code. I'm using the model to generate it. I'm checking it. I'm asking questions about it. But I actually write very little code outside of pasting in a couple of API keys and different things like that. So I can't really speak to if I've found a big difference in that. And then an optional long context. So if you go over to Cursor again, and then you click here and you click, I think, features, and we scroll down here, we've got the ability now to use a larger context window. So it basically can use larger context windows, but of course it's going to use more of your credits in doing so. So my quick summary on DeepSeek and Cursor: definitely go and enable it and have a play. It's interesting to use the one model to see how it thinks and how it works. For me, I'm going to stick with Claude 3.5 for now. I find it's a little bit faster, and the fact that it's integrated with the agent is still a game changer for me. I don't like using the normal mode in Composer. I've really gotten used to using agent, so I'll be sticking with 3.5 until Cursor get around to integrating the agent with DeepSeek. So that was a really quick video because a lot of people were asking questions about the updates and DeepSeek. I've got a video coming up very shortly, which is a full stack app showing you how to use a database like Supabase along with Prisma as an ORM. We'll build a front end with Next.js and connect the whole thing together using Cursor to move as quickly as possible. So if you'd like to see that,